Everyone was telling me like social media and all of this is going to drive the sales, but it was really email that drove the sales. I made $12,000 in the first 24 hours.
Wow. Nathan Barry, one of the most respected voices in the creator economy and the brains behind Kit, the software company that's powering over 50,000 creators, including names like Tim Ferriss and James Clear. What you think, the good and the bad of AI?
One thing that I'm worried about is AI taking out the bottom rung of every career ladder. But I worry that if AI eliminates the bottom rungs of all of these jobs, then...
You talk about the creator flywheel, how that's different from traditional marketing funnels.
Every step moves super smoothly into the next. It gets easier with each rotation. We can optimize our conversion rates, make our landing page better, calls to action, all of that.
Somebody on YouTube or a creator on social media, how can they leverage this flywheel concept?
YouTube is a very algorithm-driven platform. So if you have 10,000 subscribers, that is not a guarantee that you get 10,000 views. We can complain about the new social media algorithms, or you could instead...
Spotify offered you $200 million and you turned it down. Why? Yap Gang, this episode is a must listen if you're building anything online. Today we're sitting down with Nathan Barry, one of the most respected voices in the creator economy and the brains behind Kit, the software that's powering over 50,000 creators, including names like Tim Ferriss and James Clear. Nathan went from being a shy, homeschooled kid who loved making things to then building a $40 million a year company. And he did it all without venture capital. No shortcuts, just grit, purpose, and brilliant frameworks that we'll unpack in this episode. We're talking about the exact strategies Nathan used to grow from self-publishing his first book to turning down a $200 million offer from Spotify. Because what he's building isn't just a company, it's a mission rooted in creator ownership and long-term value. In this episode, you'll learn about his creator flywheel and why it blows traditional marketing funnels out of the water. We'll also break down his ladders of wealth creation and explore why teaching everything you know can become your greatest growth lever. If you've ever wondered how to turn your audience into a business or your passion into profit, this is your blueprint. So grab your coffee, your journal, whatever you need, because this episode is stacked with practical gems that could totally shift your approach with your creator journey. And if this is your first time listening to the show, go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button. We drop gems like this every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Nathan, welcome to Young and Profiting Podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited for this conversation. I love to talk about creator entrepreneurship. So when I was researching your background, I found out that you were a really shy kid and you always loved to build and sell things. So talk to me about what point did you feel like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up?
Yeah, I like to make money. And if you want to make money, you probably either need to be an entrepreneur or maybe pursue a career in sales, which I guess is pretty entrepreneurial in itself. And so maybe when I was 12 or 13, around that time, I noticed that we really didn't have much money as a family. And so I noticed a lot of conflict that came from that and just struggles. And so I thought like, okay, I got to figure out how I can make money so that I'll never have those same struggles in my life. And so I had a bunch of different ventures. One of the first ones was a pet sitting business where we'd get paid $10 a day to go to someone's house and let their pets out and, water their plants and all that. Or $10 each time we went over. So sometimes it was $20 a day, which was fantastic money. And let's see, what else? I got into woodworking. My family always made things. Like my dad built the house we grew up in. We had a little wood shop. And so I'd make these like wood carvings and sell them door to door or at craft fairs. And that made even better money. And then things didn't really take off, so I got into web design a few years later. But those were some of the early ventures.
Yeah, I loved learning about your background story because it was really unique and I didn't really expect a lot of the things that I learned. So I learned that you were homeschooled. And I also learned that you got into college early and then you dropped out at like 17 years old.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's like a wild, just those in itself is really unique. So talk to us about your experience getting homeschooled and then what made you realize like, I don't even want to do structured school at all.
Yeah, well, there were two pivotal moments for me in homeschooling. So first, I have three older siblings. And so my mom homeschooled all of us and she'd really figured out the system and the curriculum and all of that with my older siblings. And one of the best things about homeschooling, or maybe two great things about it. One is it's really tailored to you as an individual. And so you're not waiting for an entire class, or a class is not waiting for you, right? So if a subject takes you longer to figure out, that's fine. You have time. Or if you get something in 20 minutes, it's not like the class spends the next hour working on it while there's someone else that we're waiting on. And so that was one thing that was fantastic. And then the other is that it really teaches you early on that you're in charge. And my parents drilled this in. This is your responsibility. We're here to help you. But whether you get it done or not is on you, and the consequences follow, or the benefits follow as well. And so that's a lot like real life, and especially a lot like business. So one key moment was when I was probably 11 or 12. We grew up in the mountains outside of Boise, and there was a time that in the winter that we just had the most perfect snow coming down. It was the kind of thing where you don't want to be sitting inside doing school. You want to be outside sledding. And I'm just like sitting here and I can't focus at all. I'm just staring outside, watching the snow accumulate. And my mom says, you know, you don't have to do school for like 4 or 5 hours. You only have to do school until it's done. And then, then you can go play outside. If that takes you 90 minutes, amazing. If that takes you 4 hours, like, all right, well, that's on you, you know? And so all the usual like complaining and lack of focus and everything else that I would do was immediately gone. It was like, all right, well, let's power through. Let's get math, let's get literature. Like, let's knock all this out. And this is like the most focused 11-year-old you've ever seen. And 90 minutes later, I'm outside sledding. School's done. And it took me a while to internalize that lesson. But I realized, like, basically, there's no speed limit at all. You get to set the pace.
Mm.
Changed my entire worldview because I'm like, wait a second. Why have I been wasting all this time having school take 4 hours or 5 hours a day when I could just actually sit down and focus and knock this out? And that's on me. So that was one thing. And then a few years later, I realized that all of my friends were older than me. My older siblings were great at letting me like hang out with them, and their friends were my friends, and they were super inclusive. And that was great until I realized, like, oh, you all are going to go to college. And I'm like, this age gap that didn't matter before is going to be really obvious when I still have, 2.5 years of school left and we're all gone. And so I went back to my mom and I said, so is high school, because I'm just now starting to enter high school or think about it, is high school a set amount of work or 4 years? And she's like, look, same philosophy. I've outlined all the curriculum for your older siblings. If you get that done in 3 years, you can graduate in 3 years, or even sooner if you want. And I remember thinking that I was really bored when I did math. And I was also really bored when we'd go on these family road trips, like an 8-hour drive to Seattle. And so I was like, why don't I just combine these two? And so I basically just did a speed run through as many school subjects and curriculum as I could. And on like these family road trips, I would do like a month's worth of math homework. And every time I get stuck, I'd have, an older brother sitting next to me who I could be like, all right, what's the deal with this pre-calculus? And he would explain. And so the end result is I ended up graduating high school when I was 15, a little before I turned 16, and then going to college and only being slightly behind my much older friends. And it just really drilled in this idea of like, there is no speed limit. You set the pace.
I love that so much. So then you got to college, first real school experience. Is that right?
Yeah. So we always had, my mom made us take all the standardized tests for like middle school and high school. It was kind of funny. We'd ask like, okay, what's a good grade as we did this? And it was always in percentiles. And so it wasn't a score. It was like how you scored relative to all the other students. And she would say, so long as you get in the 95th percentile, we're good. And so I remember thinking like, okay, you have to be in the 95th percentile. And we'd get like 98th in one thing and 99th in another, all that. I'm like, sweet, we're good. It wasn't until I realized like what that actually means. And that means that, that you've scored higher than 95% or 98% of all the kids who took that. It's just, that's the way that my mom anchored it. And had I fully understood it, I would have been like, Mom, that's an insanely high bar. But she's like, what? Homeschooled. Like, basically, everyone always had this idea of like, oh, you're getting an inferior education was sort of the common thing. And so she counteracted that by saying like, no, you're going to learn so well that, you're
You'll
at the
do
top of
better
your
than
game.
everybody else. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that was our like check in to standardized school. But yeah, college was the first time, in an outside classroom and all of that. I also showed up when I was 15. So
That must have been tough.
one funny thing is a friend of mine who had also been homeschooled, and she was a couple years older. She had started college when she was 16, and she gave me some advice on to never answer the question of how old you are because everyone will immediately treat you differently, but to not lie about it. And so her method, which I adopted, is when someone come up because you'd be sitting in math class and they'd be like, "How how old are you?" you know, and instead of saying, "Oh, I'm 15," I would say, "Guess," and they'd look at me and be like, "Okay, well, he looks 15, but he's in a college freshman class, so which makes him 18, so 17?" And I would just say, "Oh, good guess," because like it was a good guess. It was wrong, but it was a good guess. And then they would be forever thinking and be like, "Yeah, this kid's 17 and he's in class." And I'm like, I just never corrected it. And so,
I love
but
that.
that meant that people would, at least somewhat accept and include me. Um, and then I learned a lot in college, like all of the, navigating classes and living on my own. I ended up living in a house just off campus with my older siblings, um, and that was a good experience. And then I just kept learning and trying to figure out more ways to make money.
Yeah, which led you to dropping out of school and starting web design, right? You started doing like stuff on the internet to make money. So talk to us about your evolution of trying to make money on the internet, what really stuck first, and then how you really got into email marketing, precursor to ConvertKit.
Yeah. So I uh, probably at 2004. So I was born in 1990. So I was 14, and there was like my very first like high school girlfriend introduced me to web design, and nothing came of that relationship except for my entire career. So she was the one who showed me like, hey, you can build a website and put it on GeoCities. You can write HTML and all of this stuff. So I became obsessed, and I remember I built a website for the Idaho Chess Association. My younger brothers played chess, and I got paid $75 to design a logo and $300 to design that website. And that was like my first freelance income, maybe when I was 15 or so. And then as I was going to college, I kept taking on more design projects and learning how to build websites more and doing all of that. And then when I was 17, I'd spent 2 years in college at this point, and I landed my first $10,000 web design project. And I called up my mom and I said, like, look, I'm here to learn how to make money. I'm pretty sure like I'm making money now. And so she was like, yeah, if you want to drop out, like go for it. And so I ended up dropping out and doing freelance web design for a couple more years. Now in 2009, so I've been freelancing for almost 2 full years at that point. Um, I guess the end of 2008, I had like my best month ever. I landed a bunch of clients. That was going really well. And then I went away on a trip to South Africa with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and a bunch of friends. And we worked at this orphanage in South Africa and like did these amazing trips. And I took 5 weeks off, which I felt really good about because my freelance business was going so well. And when I came back, all the clients that I had lined up to work with, they all were like, we're not spending money because it was then like the financial crisis had fully hit. And so I went from feeling awesome about my freelance business to be like, this is going well at all. And so the quick version of all of it is I ended up taking a job at the one client that was still spending money, which was a company called Unity Media Group. And I ended up leading the design team for them. They were like 2 people when I joined, and they raised a bunch of venture capital, like scaled up the team. And I spent 3 years there, learned really a ton, like the basics of leading a team, all of that. And that was actually the last real job that I've had. The only 3 jobs I've had in my life are uh, working at Wendy's in high school, I worked for the Boise State University bookstore very briefly. And then I worked for this company, Unity, on their software design team. But
Wow,
a
you're
cool
a
thing that,
true entrepreneur.
yeah. And then I've been running Kit for the last 12 years. So it's just like unemployable is probably the the technical term that
Yeah, or super ambitious and wanting to create your own offers and things like that.
and all of that.
Yeah, fam, let's talk about websites. Are you still stuck with a copy paste website? You know, those generic templates that make every site look exactly the same? Well, it's time to break that template trap. If the traditional site builders feel clunky or limiting, Framer is the solution that you've been waiting for. Framer is the designed first, no code website builder that lets anyone ship a production ready site in just minutes. You can start for free and browse hundreds of stunning pixel perfect templates or design from a totally blank canvas, which I love for creative freedom. Framer's multiplayer collaboration means your entire team, writers, designers, marketers, can work on the same page in real time with no messy version control. Want your site to stand out? You can add scroll animations, parallax effects, looping text, and more in seconds with zero code. It even comes with built-in AI to create smart layouts and instantly translate your entire site into any language. How cool is that? Behind the scenes, you'll get responsive breakpoints, built-in hosting, flexible CMS, and privacy-friendly analytics. Are you ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring an expensive developer? Launch your site for free at framer.com and use code profiting to get your first month of Pro on the house. Yes, a whole free month of Pro for free. Just go to Framer, Framer.com, and use promo code profiting to get your first month for free. Yap Gang, I recently heard a stat that really made me pause. Nearly half of American adults say they'd face financial hardship within 6 months if they lost their primary income earner. If you're thinking, well, that could be me or that could be my family, you're not alone. But the good news is that you can do something about it today. That's why I'm excited to share Policy Genius with you. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace, and they make getting life insurance ridiculously easy. You can compare quotes from top insurers in minutes and find a policy that fits your needs and your budget. I love the way they take the stress out of the process. Their licensed agents guide you every step of the way. They answer your questions, they handle your paperwork, and they also advocate for you. I highly recommend using Policy Genius to find your life insurance. And get this, this is huge. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. $1 million in coverage for just $276 a year. This is such an easy way to protect the people that you love and feel good about your future. Secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/profiting to compare free life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/profiting. Again, policygenius.com/profiting. We have a lot in common. Like, I actually started doing freelance web design in college and did that as like a freelancer while I was working at a radio station. You also got into blogging, right? So talk to us about like at what point you started blogging and then how you discovered email marketing.
Yeah. So in the web design world, people would always say, like, oh, you're self taught. And I was like, that's kind of true. But really, all of my teachers for learning web design were all of these bloggers who were writing about here's how to do this thing in CSS. Here's, these Photoshop techniques and all that. So it was really, I felt like self taught was always kind of a weird thing. Like, no, I had teachers. I didn't know them, but this amazing community on the internet were my teachers. I was just self motivated to go through and learn the material myself and all of that. So probably from 2007 onwards, I was following a lot of blogs, first web design and then kind of into business and on from there. And then a couple things happened. First, the company I worked for in 2010, the iPad came out and they said, hey, we want to have an app in the App Store the day the iPad is released. And we want you to design it. And I had no idea what I was doing. And so myself and then a couple developers in the company had sort of this trial by fire of learning how to design and build iPad apps. And we pulled it off. We had the app released, got to, see it on day one and do all this. And that sent me down this path of learning how to design for the iPhone and iPad specifically. And then probably for the next 2 or 3 years, that was all I did. I did other things too, but that's all I wanted to do because it was just so much fun designing for like a physical device, and the form factors were so different from the basics of web design. And so that continued until I started building my own apps, and I would code them myself and get help from my developer friends, and I'd do the design. And I got to the point where a few of my apps were making a couple $1,000s a year. And um, with that, or sorry, a couple $1,000s a month. And with that, I decided to quit my job, go back to freelance, and I sort of had this baseline of product income, and then I started doing more freelancing all the time, paying attention to this like world of blogging and like the very early creators who were making money online. Uh, and we dive into all of that because it's a it's a fun process.
Yeah, I'd love to just like really quick in terms of your experience. I think you used MailChimp to start
Yeah.
with. And then what, this is so helpful to know that you were building apps because for me, I was like, man, I couldn't imagine like launching like a platform. Like that seems like such a difficult thing to do to like build a whole entire platform that's going to compete with these giants like MailChimp. And I don't know if Constant Contact was out back then,
Oh
but
yeah.
there's a lot of email service providers out there that are giants. And so it's helpful to know that you had all this experience with app design and you kind of like merged what you knew in that space with, the problem that you were trying to solve with email. So what problem were you trying to solve? Why did you decide to create this platform?
Yeah. So after I left Unity and started working on freelance design, I was really inspired by people like Chris Gillibo, Tim Ferriss, and others like that who were talking about here's how you make money on the internet. And Chris Gillibo would do a lot of, he would make a guide on a very particular subject and then sell that. And so I was like, okay, let me write a book about how to design iPhone apps. And I had two thoughts with it. One, if I'm the guy who wrote the book on iPhone app design, then I'll get way more clients wanting to hire me to
Yeah.
design an app. Like the credibility will increase. And the second one was, well, if these guys are making money, I probably can do. And so I sat down, wrote a book. It was called the App Design Handbook. And as an aside, I struggled to build a habit to write consistently. And so I was like, I'm going to make an iPhone app to help me track this. And I made this app called Commit, which isn't around anymore, but there's other apps like it. And you just say, hey, I'm going to do this habit every day. And it just reminds you and then keeps track of the streak. And so uh, I, I had this I said, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day. And I was at 80 days in a row when I published the book. And the next day, the iPhone app popped up and said, are you going to write 1,000 words today? And I was like, no, I finished writing the book. And so I ended up writing I wrote like a summary of how the launch went and all that, published it on my blog. And then of course the app popped up the next day as it's going to do and said, are you going to write 1,000 words today? And I was like, no. And so I ended up writing another book. So we get into all the numbers, but it was wild. Like I just launched down this path of consistent writing for a long time. But my goal from the book was I thought, okay, if I can get new clients and if I can make $10,000 over the lifetime of the book, that would be amazing. And so I launched it to an email list of 798 people on MailChimp. And everyone was telling me like social media and all of this is going to drive the sales, but it was really email that drove the sales. And so I made $12,000 in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
And I was blown away. And I never took on another freelance design client. I thought, this is a dream, making product income. But then the other thing was that email was driving all of these sales. And so I guess after that book, two things happened. One, I became obsessed with email and I was trying to learn everything I could about best practices. And then the second thing is I just kept writing because I didn't want to break the chain in this little iPhone app I had made. And so I ended up writing 1,000 words a day for another 90 days straight. And at the end of that, I published another book called Designing Web Applications, like following a similar model, but applied to a different medium. And that launched to a bigger email list of like 3,000 people. And I made $26,000 in the first day,
Wow.
$50,000 in the first month. And my last job that I quit a year earlier, I made $63,000 a year So this was I'm now making almost in a month what I made in a year.
Yeah, I
And
know
I'm
that
like, the
feeling.
creator world is amazing. So it was a ton of fun.
That's amazing. So basically, you became a creator once you started writing these books. That's when you officially became a creator and you kind of never looked back in terms of being a creator. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so I mean, that next year I made $250,000 as a creator, and I'm like, this is a dream come true. But in that, I'm obsessed with email, and I'm realizing like email is the secret to high earnings as a creator. I'd see these influencers who had, at the time, tens of thousands of followers on Instagram or something else, and they weren't making nearly the money that I was making. And so I realized like, oh, it's in the email list.
Well, where did you build your email list from? Like, if you were just starting out, where was it from? Like, where did you build the email list to start with when you had your books?
Yeah, so I built it from a lot of other blogs. I wrote lots of guest posts on other blogs, different like design and iPhone app development communities. You got to realize at the time, Twitter was going strong,
Yep,
but Instagram was only 2 years old at this time, maybe 3 years old. And so Instagram was not the powerhouse that it is
I
now.
remember.
Today, I would go all in, on either Instagram or LinkedIn, right? Or both. But yeah, so the emails were coming from the, the blog and other communities. SEO was starting to be a thing. And then I just said like, all right, let me learn everything I can about email. And I would implement every best practice I could of like, let me give away a sample chapter. And then there's an automated sequence that gets you to buy the book afterwards. And here's how we're segmenting the list. And I just had to hack around MailChimp for all of this. And so then I said like, you know what? I'm going to start a email company just for content creators like me. It was called ConvertKit, and I'm gonna build this up. So that became the next 12 years of my life. And then last year we rebranded from ConvertKit to Kit.
Yeah. We're actually transitioning to Kit at Yap Media. So that's like well underway, which I'm really actually
very
from MailChimp to ConvertKit. Luckily, MailChimp is not my sponsor. Um, yeah, that's absolutely incredible. So you became a creator before the term creator economy was really created. This is
Yeah,
something I would say in the last year only is a term that I've really, maybe in the last 2 years, I've been really saying
I
creator
think creator
entrepreneur.
economy was
Creator economy was there, but creator entrepreneurship,
yes.
that's like a new thing. I feel like in the last year or two, it's really started to bubble up where like everybody wants to be a creator entrepreneur and like almost all entrepreneurs are becoming creator entrepreneurs. How have you seen everything evolve?
Entrepreneurs are great at identifying points of leverage and then maximizing that. And so usually there's something where you figure out, oh, here's a distribution method, or here's a way that we can manufacture a product, or something like that, something that gives you leverage. And so something that you and I have known for a long time is that building an audience is insane leverage, probably the best leverage you could ever get, because